Ciao, everyone. Today I'm going to be chatting to Michelle from the Intrepid Italian all about her experience learning Italian and her amazing course. If anyone is interested in finding out more about Michelle's course, you can go to my Instagram profile and click the link in my bio where you can find out more about it. The way that this live is going to work today is we're going to chat first about Michelle, her experience learning Italian. Ciao, Danny. And then we're going to get into chatting about her course. What is the 80-20 method, and some of your amazing questions that you sent me. So I'm going to invite Michelle now to the live. She sent a request and we can, okay. Michelle, I've sent you the request. Let's see how that goes. Accept.
Hey, I'm here. I'm really good. I'm just adjusting the camera so I'm not showing your face.
Amazing.
How are you?
Very good. Lovely to chat to a fellow Australian as well.
I know it's really nice to hear an Australian accent. In here, yeah, here in London, obviously, I'm surrounded by all sorts of accents, but it's really nice to hear an Aussie one and all the expressions that we use. That especially I confuse the Brits a lot. They're like, "What are you talking about?"
Amazing, Michelle. Well, maybe just to start with, you might want to introduce yourself for any of my followers who don't already know you. I know a lot of them do.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, how far back would you like me to go? I feel like there's a bit of a story there, and everyone needs to prepare themselves. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Michelle. I'm originally from Melbourne, Australia, but I have Italian heritage on my dad's side. My dad is Pugliese from the region of Puglia, which is on the heel of the boot of Italy. So my dad and his family immigrated from Italy just after the Second World War. So in the early 50s, they immigrated. They got on a boat from Naples. It took them a month, and then they arrived a month later in the port of Melbourne. And yeah, he was 4 years old at the time, so he was super young. And he spoke a dialect at home with his family, which, is very common to do. So he didn't grow up in an Italian school, or he didn't learn Italian formally. So he spoke the dialect at home, and then he spoke English, when he went to school in Australia. So when he got married, he married an Australian with Irish heritage, hence why I have freckles. And we never grew up speaking Italian. We didn't learn Italian. We didn't learn the dialect. It was just something that it just didn't happen. My dad tried to teach my eldest sister Italian, but he had a few run-ins, so to speak, with his parents, because they were like, no, that's how we say it, but that's not standard, or that's not correct Italian. So in the end, my dad just gave up. He's like, oh, well, forget it. So none of us learned. But I'm actually named after my nonno. So for those of you that don't know, nonno is grandfather in Italian. And as tradition goes, you're named after your parents' parents, so your grandparents. But I'm the youngest of three girls. So my sister got my nonna's name, my grandmother. My middle sister got my dad's nickname. So my dad's name is Leonardo. Don't ask me why, but the soprannome, which is a nickname, is Nardine. And you're probably more familiar with Nadine. So it's a bit of it's quite different, but it's kind of similar if you think about it. And then finally, Dad's like, we're running out of names, and I really want to pass on my own dad's name to my children. So he's like, we're in Australia, no one's going to know. They'll just think it's Michelle, just with one L. So my name is Michele in Italy, and it confuses a lot of Italians, especially when I book a hotel and I turn up. They're like, oh, but you're a woman, and I'm like, yeah. So, I've been constantly telling this story for so many years, but it's a nice way that I get to remind myself daily of my nonno. But he is basically the reason why I wanted to learn Italian. I grew up, spending a lot of time with him, and he'd be very affectionate. He'd pinch my cheek and he'd play games with me, and like sort of magic tricks. Like he would hide the thumb and he would do stuff like this, and I'd just be mind blown. So when he passed away, it was like a flick of a switch, and it really inspired me to want to learn Italian. So I started off really humbly, I started off with like a travel phrase guide, but then I got really frustrated because there was no structure to it. I could see similarities with word endings, but there was no, reason behind these things that the book would give me. So I was really sort of frustrated and sort of, how do people learn languages? I don't know if I'll ever be able to do this. So this was when I was 17, and it wasn't until my early 20s that I was a bit more independent. I was going to university, I was driving a car, and that's when I started to find other means of learning Italian. So I started attending night lessons, night classes in the evening. So after university, I would go to Italian night classes. Some of them didn't continue because there weren't enough students. So it took me a few years to sort of find my groove and to find the right methods and to find, the right, the teachers that I resonated with. And I was 25, I think, when I decided to move to Italy. I was ready to take the plunge. I was at a B1 level and I was really happy with my level. And I just wanted more. I just wanted to be constantly surrounded by it. And I know that one of the people in your audience was sort of asking about, how do you, if you don't live in Italy, how do you surround yourself with the language? And all I can say to that is it's not where you live, it's how you live. So it's not where you live, it's how you live. So, maybe I did have an unfair advantage in that there is a really big Italian community in Melbourne. But, in most places, in most corners of the world, there is, at least one Italian restaurant or one Italian establishment, a cafe or something. Or maybe there is an Italian film festival that comes to town and you want to go and see some of the movies. There are so many ways, it's so much easier for us now to expose ourselves to the Italian language than I had when I was learning. There was no Netflix. There was no podcast. Well, maybe there were, but it wasn't like, it was in its infancy. You didn't turn to, online courses and stuff like that. Everything was in person or with a textbook. So, I just wanted to sort of drop that in because I really did surround myself with the language in every which way possible. I would, the Italian Film Festival in Melbourne, went for 2 weeks and I was obsessed. Like literally I would see 2 to 3 movies a day. Like I kid you not. I would I would try to squeeze it in. I would be sneaky. I would sneak out of work a little bit earlier. I would go to the film festival. I would see like the 6 o'clock show. And then I'd see the one at like 8:30, 9 o'clock whenever it started. And then on the weekend, I'd drag my mum or anyone who was willing, and I would try and do like the morning, afternoon, and the evening films. Like oh
my God.
It was just another level. Like I was really obsessed with it. Like I really loved it. But anyway, so I got to the point where I wanted more, and that's when I decided to move to Italy. And I spent 3 years in Rome, and my plan was to live there indefinitely. But I don't have a European passport, even though my dad was born in Italy. He was naturalized Australian, so he doesn't even have a passport. So that means I can't get it because I was born after he was naturalized. So it's really unfortunate and really complex. I know it's one day, maybe I'll be able to get it. So I moved to Italy. I had a wonderful time. I did my C1 exam, and I was really happy there. But then, visa ran out and I had to make a decision, and that's when I decided to move to London. And that's when I started the Intrepid Guide and now Intrepid Italian. And now I get to help people that maybe have like a similar pathway to mine or a similar heritage, in that they have the Italian heritage, but they didn't necessarily learn it at home. And now they want to, because, it can be daunting as an adult to learn a foreign language. We unfortunately have this negative mindset that we're too young, we're too old, or, we're a terrible memory. Nothing is hopeless. Like there is always a solution. So,
Definitely.
it's there is a way.
Oh, what a story, Michelle. That is amazing. I wanted to ask you as well, perhaps before we get stuck right into the course and everything that entails, a little bit
Sure.
more about your experience living in Rome, and perhaps I know I have a lot of language mishaps that happened when I moved, and I'm sure you do too. And I think that's something that everyone experiences when you're learning a new language. And I think, it's sort of sometimes nice to reflect on those experiences too. Were there any moments
Absolutely.
in Rome where, there was just a hilarious language mishap
I
or
mean, I don't have like the typical ones where it was super embarrassing, but one of the things that I really had to pay attention to was the pronunciation of certain words. As an Australian, we have a very relaxed way of speaking, and I feel like if we open our mouths too much, it's sort of it's a cross between feeling a little bit embarrassed, but also maybe like a bit of like the tall poppy syndrome. Like if we speak too articulately, we might be
yes.
cut down to size like, oh, who's this person? I'm not sure if Americans really understand this whole concept that we have just grown up in of this culture of not wanting to sing our praises or be seen as being better than anyone else. But in terms of the pronunciation, I really had to focus on opening my mouth to pronounce, certain letters correctly, because otherwise you can have a few embarrassing run-ins. So say, for
Yeah.
example, one that's really common is the difference between the word dog and the word meat.
Yes.
So carne, C-A-N-E, that's dog. But you have to add a R, which kind of comes across accidentally if you want to say meat. So C-A-R, R, if you're an American, we don't pronounce our R's very well. So that's the first problem. So C-A-R-N-E is meat. So, I would sort of get a few funny looks if you go into a restaurant and, if you want to order meat and you say dog, which is carne, io prendo carne. No, I don't want a dog. I want the meat. um, but that was just one example. What was another one? I'm just trying to think. Oh, well. Pasta. So everyone knows the long penne, Penne, or penne, Pene. So it's either a double N, or a single N. And there's a big difference between the two. One is the pasta with the double N, and the single N is not what you think. It's basically you're saying penis in Italian.
Yes.
So if you're ordering penne pizza, you're going to be really careful just to linger a little bit longer on that double N so it's heard. Otherwise, you'll be ordering something else. I mean, obviously you can't order it, but you might get a few funny looks. But,
Yes.
Italians are really forgiving. They're really lovely about it, and they'll have a giggle with you. So you're okay. You're in good hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's these sort of anecdotes and experiences that really help you to remember that, okay, I need to, make sure I pronounce the R, the letter R in carne, or I need to make sure I linger a little bit longer on the N in penne. So yeah, there's a few more examples of those, but yeah, it's all part of the learning experience, and that's what makes it so enjoyable.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I have got lots of stories like that too. It's a big one, the pronunciation. So I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I really wanted to ask you, I guess, like about your course. I mean, for everyone who's watching, I've had a play with the A1 level.
Yeah.
I'm probably myself, probably between B1 and B2 at the moment. I've definitely, it's
Amazing.
really funny. When I first moved here to Turin, I'd been in Italy for maybe like 8 months by that point. I thought it was a lot better than what I was. When I met my boyfriend, I said to him, yeah, maybe we could try speaking in Italian. I think I'm like B1. I was probably still an A1 at the time. And he had a little bit of a laugh, didn't say anything. He was, very very accommodating at that point. And he's told me since later that, okay, I think now you're probably at that B1 level, like a few years later. But it all takes time. So
It does. And you know what? You might be further along in terms of your grammar, but the speaking practice is where people get nervous. And
yeah,
I feel like personally that if I really feel comfortable with the grammar, it empowers me to want to speak. If I feel a little bit rusty with the grammar, then I'm not so inclined to speak. So that's why, yeah, I really like to emphasize having like a solid foundation in the grammar for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for everyone who's watching and maybe if they don't know what the Intrepid Italian course is, do
Yeah,
you want to just do a little, intro into what it is?
sure.
Everyone's so curious about the 80/20 method as
Yeah,
well.
cool. Okay, so yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the 80/20 method or the 80/20 rule, I should say, or the 80/20 principle, but it was basically coined by a management consultant called Joseph M. Duran. Now, he found this was actually named after an Italian economist, so it's sort of a nice little tie in there. So the Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto, he noticed in 1896, so it's a while ago, that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. So this was documented and it was just sort of something that had hung around, but it wasn't until Joseph M. Duran sort of connected the pieces a little bit. He connected the dots, and a lot of other areas in our lives have this sort of 80/20 ratio. So say, for example, if you're on a website, it's got lots of articles, but there's usually the 20%, the top 20% that are really popular, that attracts all the attention. Now, a similar thing can be found with languages. So if you think about, all the words that are in a language, there's a couple of 100,000 of words in Italian at least, but you don't use all of those. Think of all the words in English that we know of that you don't use in, regular everyday speech. So Italian and learning a language, it's really powerful to focus on that 20% of the language that you get to use that's really versatile, that can then be translated in 80% of the situations that you find yourself in. So I started to apply this approach to learning Italian specifically for travel. So Intrepid Italian for Travel is the first course that I created. Now, this is basically a crash course in Italian that I recommend to anyone that is, they're short on time, they really want to learn Italian, they don't have too much time, and they just want to get the basics. So that's the first course that follows the 80/20 rule. This is basically the method where I teach you right from the beginning the really powerful, useful phrases that you'll be using in everyday situations. So things like, when you introduce yourself, or you're asking for directions, or you want to know how much something costs, or you're ordering food. So all those typical interactions that you have when you go traveling, that's basically what you get in that Intrepid Italian for Travel course. And then I realized that there are people that want to take the next step and they really want to get to, say a B1 level, which is the level that you need if you want to apply for Italian citizenship, or you want to get your permesso di soggiorno and stuff like that. So I wanted to create like a proper pathway that sort of helps people at different stages of their learning, because, for me, especially when I first started with Italian, I dabbled in that travel vocabulary and that really got me excited. And then that's when I took it seriously. So that's where the Intrepid Italian A1 for beginners, Intrepid Italian for advanced beginners, which is A2, and Intrepid Italian for intermediates, which is the B1 course. So that's giving you the pathway that you need to get a really solid foundation with the grammar. So those are the 4 courses. And then more recently, after lots of feedback and getting people to fill in surveys, I realized that another big part that people struggle with is the confidence to speak. And it's sort of finding a happy medium between, okay, when you're in like a sort of a classroom situation where the teacher is, slow to explain, they make sure that you've understood, they'll stop and they'll say, have you understood? And if you don't, then they'll try another way to explain it. And then you've got stuff on Netflix, which is like super fast Italian. And there's no middle ground. There's no sort of way for you to challenge yourself without being daunted by the whole task. You're maybe a step up from how a teacher speaks, and you're a step below all this native level content. Remember, this is for natives. This isn't meant for beginners or learners of Italian. So that's why I've created a new course, which is based on the learning theory of comprehensible input. Comprehensible input is basically you're using material or content that is just slightly more challenging than your current level, so you learn naturally, not consciously. So this means that you're not going to be overwhelmed by the task. Maybe you know already a lot of the words that are being used, but there are certain phrases or structures that you're not familiar with. And that gives you enough of a basis that you can kind of guess what it means, because you know a lot of the other words that are surrounding it. So this is the foundation or the structure of my new course, Intrepid Italian for Confident Conversations. So you're getting something that isn't too slow and it's not too quick. It's somewhere in between. But it also has all those idiomatic expressions that you don't necessarily learn when, you know, you're in a language class, in a formal setting, or in a textbook. This is stuff that you learn out in the real world when you're hanging around Italians and they express themselves in these colorful ways, which are idiomatic expressions. You know, we do the same in English. Think of all the things I'm sure that you have said to your partner that you don't realize were Australian expressions that you just thought everyone says this. And then he was like, if he speaks English, which it sounds like he does, he probably wouldn't have heard those expressions before. It's very specific. So Italians are very much the same. So this course, Intrepid Italian for Confident Conversations, has a mix between, you know, the comprehensible input, but also the idiomatic expressions that get used a lot that you don't necessarily learn elsewhere. So that's 5 courses that I've got, which give you a natural progression between each of the levels that that you may be in, that you may find yourself in. So if you're ready to double, before you got a trip coming up, then start with the travel course and then work your way up.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I just want to quickly mention anyone who's interested in that, I've got the link to Michelle's course. If you go on my Instagram page and you click the link in my bio, you can find all of those courses there too. If you want to, you know, have some more information or enroll in them as well. Michele, with all the different courses, how, maybe if someone's not a beginner, I mean, that's pretty obvious, you know, where to start. If someone's not quite sure of their level, what would you recommend that they start with?
So this is obviously a very personal question, and it could be very, it's very important to be able to find the right level for you. So this is where I would encourage anyone to reach out to me. You can send me a DM, you can message me, we can have a little bit of a dialogue, and I can find out and quiz you a little bit about your experience with learning Italian up until this point. You know, it could be that you only know a few words, you know, in which case the A1 course would be a great fit. Maybe you already know a bit of the grammar. Maybe you already know the past tense, the present tense. You know how to conjugate verbs. You know about articles. You know about, you know, masculine and feminine. Then it could be that you're ready for the A2 course. So it really depends. It could be that, you know, that you maybe know Italian, but you've never actually followed like a structured process. I know a lot of people that use Duolingo. Now, Duolingo isn't going to get you to fluency. You know, every language tool has its place, and it's great to have that variety. I would only recommend Duolingo for the benefit of vocabulary, but as most people have seen when they use Duolingo, it's, you know, they teach you these phrases that aren't necessarily, well, they're really not what you would use in everyday life. You know, like when I was learning Norwegian with Monli a long time ago, one of the examples was, I'm eating bread sitting on the bathroom floor crying or something. Like, it's not, I get that it's funny, but it's not something that you would necessarily use. This isn't following the 80-20. This isn't something that you're going to use when you're speaking to Italians, you know, when you're traveling in Italy. So why would you learn something that isn't going to empower you to want to speak, that isn't something that you can actively use and apply in a real life situation? So Duolingo is great for the vocabulary. It's great to build up, you know, a routine of learning Italian, but I would replace that time with following something more structured that is going to give you, you know, the more powerful vocabulary and phrases that you can then implement. So what was the original question?
Oh my God. Which level?
Oh yeah, the which level. Yeah, I mean, it can be a little bit hard to know. That would give you a bit of a guide. Other than that, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions. That's what I'm here for. I want to make sure that, you know, you hit the ground running and you pick a course that's the right one for your level, for sure.
Yeah, that's a really great example with Duolingo, and I think maybe sometimes people are a bit confused as to what the difference is between a course like Duolingo and something like yours.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about your course, just from, you know, trying the A1 level, is that it's that nice in between as well, because you've got the video content, where you are there, you can hear the pronunciation. I really like having someone explain things to me, and you do that by video format so well. And then there's the exercises to back it up. The thing that Duolingo, great for just vocab. And then, I've also tried with the textbook, but there's not been that person or that sort of in between feeling of, hearing the pronunciation, having something feel like it's explained to you. And that's why I think your course is so great. Also, for a number of other reasons, it's self-paced. Everyone's very busy at the moment. And I like that you can sort of dabble in and dabble out with your course. And the videos or the lessons themselves, how long is the lesson?
So there are two different kinds of video lessons that are in each of the courses. So each course has 17 modules, and it's a mix between a lesson that is purely focused on the grammar, and then there are modules that are communication modules. So this is where you sort of gather all the previously learned grammar and you start to apply it in a certain situation. So the format of each module is that there is a video lesson. Now, depending on the topic, on the theme, the videos can vary in length. They could be, 10 minutes or they could be 20 minutes. It depends on the complexity of the topic. So, I sort of want to give you a lot of time and lots of examples. I always include lots of examples to really help paint the picture of, okay, well, this is what this is, but it makes more sense once I apply it in context. And that's when I, go into lots of details and lots of variations of, examples and things like that. So, like you said, it's, I worked with a native Italian to create this. So I created the structure. There was a certain specific way I wanted to explain things from the perspective of a native English speaker learning Italian. And there are lots of ways that I can sort of connect the dots between how an Italian brain thinks and how an Anglophone or an English-speaking person thinks about, forming sentences and how they talk, and finding that middle ground to help connect the dots so it clicks. There are certain things in English that might seem outdated to us, but this is perfect Italian. That sort of mindset, if you think about what it was like for Jane Austen in the 1700s and the way that people spoke back then. So you'll know this. So say, for example, there is an example which really resonated with me because I was obsessed with it at the time. Pride and Prejudice in Jane Austen. The father says to his daughter, Jane, I am glad you are come back. He doesn't say, I'm glad you have come back. I'm glad you are come back. So this are verb, or essere in Italian, is the same way that Italians speak, and it's the same way that they talk. We don't say it that way anymore, but Italians do. So you can see how English has changed and evolved in a different direction than Italian. And it's something that, because it's really a mental leap usually for English speakers to get their head around, well, why don't you say, I'm glad you are gone, or I'm glad you are come? Like it doesn't feel right. But if you can sort of understand that actually in English, we spoke the exact same way. And so I like to include those sorts of examples.
That's awesome.
There's another one with prego. Everyone knows prego. Usually, you're welcome, please come in, or next in line. It's sort of, quite a versatile word, which it literally means I pray or pray. So again, in 1700s, in, English at that time, we would say things like pray, do tell. Now,
yes.
So in Italian, they say prego, mi dica, pray, tell me. It's the exact same thing. It's just that the English language has lost that formality, but the Italian language has still maintained it. So it's all these sort of little, hints and tips that sort of help connect the dots and just make it a little bit more easier for an English brain, to understand how Italians form their sentences. And it's fascinating. It's like a history lesson at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. You're so right. And something else that I really liked about your course is that this explanation, and that you also offer it. I mean, obviously in a lot of the videos you're speaking Italian, of course, but you do an explanation in English to make sure that the rules are 100% understood, because I think that was something I struggled with doing an in-person course at a very beginner level. And a lot of the time here it was 100% in Italian, often also because the teacher wasn't very confident with English, and it was just the method of teaching that, you know, they weren't going to speak to you at all in English, which, like, on one hand, that's great for, you know, really throwing yourself in there and hearing the Italian, but on the other hand, there are some quite complicated points of the grammar to understand, and so if you're not getting what they're saying to you in Italian, then it's just goes right over your head.
Yeah,
So
and
I
it's
really,
only natural that your brain will want to revert to English to sort of help connect the dots. I've had a couple of people reach out to me saying, "Look, I'm in Italy. You know, I've been learning Italian at a local school, but it's all in Italian, and it's just too much. You know,
yeah,
they need English at least in the beginning stages to fall back on. So yes, these courses are presented in English, but you know that's only to make sure that you've understood everything. All the examples, they're with the voice of a native Italian, so you'll get me doing the explainers, and then all the examples will be in the correct, you know, pronunciation. So that's just to make sure that you guys are hearing, you know, the everyday Italian accent, so you can emulate that when you're
yeah.
practicing. So yeah.
Yeah, amazing, amazing, Michelle. And I was going to ask you, like, learning Italian, if you could offer, you know, people who are watching, your top 3 tips for how they can improve their Italian. You know, I've had a few messages from people being like, I feel like, you know, I'm at a kind of level of A2 and I just can't get to the next one, or some other people who are at a beginner level. And they're just sort of looking for some more inspiration, I guess, on how they can really, yeah, improve their level of Italian. What would you say?
Absolutely. And I think the key word here is inspiration and something that resonates with you. You know, I can't stress enough, you know, don't feel guilty if everyone is using Duolingo and now they're suddenly fluent. That's not the case. No one gets fluent with Duolingo. There is no one tool, there is no one method for everyone. You just have to find what works for you. And also, the variety is good. You know, I didn't just use one book. I didn't just do one language class with the same teacher. I exposed myself to lots of different teachers because they all have their own ways of teaching. And the more you hear something taught in different ways, the more it starts to sink in. So I wouldn't be afraid to, you know, do my course, also do someone else's course. There is so many different ways that you can learn. I like to think that, I'm at the stage where I can understand where an Australian brain, an English speaking brain is coming from a beginner level. So that's why these courses very much focus on building the confidence right from the beginning. So, you know, I give you the phrases that you can start to play around with. I give you the loan words and the cognates to help you understand that learning Italian isn't completely foreign to you. There are ways that you can find progress with the language. So yeah, have faith that, you know, just because one tool works for someone else and it doesn't resonate with you, don't feel like there's something wrong with you. It just means that you resonate with something different and that
Yeah,
you can just leave that be and then you go and find something else. So
yeah,
in terms of a plateau, that's usually sort of when you reach the limit with a particular tool or a method or a course or whatever it is. That means that it's usually time to go and find something else because what got you here won't get you here. So
yeah.
it's just a matter of mixing it up and yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I think that's nice advice, you know, to do your course, and then also if you've got a textbook that you want to dab into, or if there's a conversation class happening, it's nice to do a few different
Yeah, for
things.
sure. I mean, what I sort of suggest is that with my courses, you know, you get all the grammar that you need from zero to B1. Everything is in there. But if you want that speaking practice, then you can use platforms like Hello Talk, which is like a messaging thing where you connect with other natives or other people that want to learn your language. So it's like a language exchange. You can use platforms like italki. So it's sort of, you know, pick something, pick your main strategy, your main way of learning Italian, and then supplement in other areas or other tools that can help you improve certain areas. But yeah, if I was to recommend anything, it would be to join one of my courses and then to supplement it with speaking practice by using another tool, which, yeah, if anyone wants to talk about it, you can reach out to me separately. But yeah, and then, you know, you'll reach a point, you know, you'll get to B1 and you'll be ready to do something more challenging.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Amazing. Now, Michelle, I also wanted to mention to everyone who's watching your bundle deal. in case people are interested in that, and the special promotion that's open, obviously registrations for the course. So for people who are watching and they don't know Michele, this course doesn't run all the time, right? So, registrations opened on Monday.
Yes.
No, yesterday,
Yeah, what's
Sunday.
today? Monday. Yeah, today's Monday. So they opened last night. Yeah, the night before. Oh, the time zones blow my mind.
Like,
Depending on
yeah,
where you are in the world, yeah. I'm in London, you're in Italy, so
yeah. So, yeah, I wanted to say a few things, I guess, is that this doesn't run all the time. There's an open date for registrations and a close date. And then, yeah, a little bit about your bundle deal if people are interested in the course and they want to maybe start from probably a travel or beginner level and buy a few.
yeah, sure. Okay, so for those of you that are maybe you're not ready to make the full commitment to learning Italian, that's when I would suggest my Intrepid Italian for Travel course. Now, this particular course is open all year round. So this one is basically the entry level. It's the crash course into Italian, and it's going to give you that everyday Italian that you'll need with your traveling. So the 80/20 is, of course, applied in that course as well. And then at the moment, registrations are open for the A1, the A2, the B1 courses. So if you're not familiar with this A1, B1, all these sort of numbers that go up to C2, this is the Common European Framework of Reference, which is how they measure different levels of European languages. So yeah, beginners A1, advanced beginners A2, and then intermediates B1. So these three courses are now open for registrations. Now, I only open these up every few months or so because there is a bit of an influx with new students, and I like to welcome everyone at the same time, answer all questions and things like that. And then so this is, if you get one course, it's 347 US. But if you buy two, you get the third one free. So that's the bundle. But to make things even easier for you guys, and because it's January and we want to start off the year on the right foot, I'm throwing in a bonus gift, which is the Intrepid Italian for Confident Conversations course. So you're essentially getting 4 courses for the price of 2. So that is available for the next 2 weeks. It finishes on the 6th of December, the 6th of February. So you have until then to have a look at the information, ask any questions, and then get enrolled and get started. Now you have lifetime access to all the courses, so you can enroll now and then start next week, or you can start in a month's time, and you can work it around your own schedule. So there's absolutely no restrictions in terms of that. The reason why these courses are self-paced is because not only are we all in different time zones, I can't help everyone from Australia all the way over to Canada and everywhere in between. And, we've all got busy lifestyles and we all need to sort of, work in language learning wherever we can. So these courses allow you to do that at your own time, at your own pace. And it also gives you the flexibility to revise things, to go back, a few seconds and just listen to something again. Like, there's no judgment. And when you join like a language class, you don't get that benefit. You don't get that luxury of being able to sort of go back without having to pay again to attend more classes. So there's lots of benefits for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And Michele, I think we were talking about doing another live next week so people have to have a look at the courses. Probably going to be some questions about how the courses work, or potentially some questions, so we can hop back on next week, let everyone know when, and answer some of those questions too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I sort of allow, 2 weeks, because it gives people the opportunity to sort of go away, to think about it, come up with any questions, and then just send me a DM and we can work through it together.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Wow. Well, it's been so lovely chatting to you.
You
And,
too. I've been following your lives in Italy with all the different people around Italy. Like, wish I was there.
Oh, I've got one actually this week. First one for the year. I had a bit of a break.
Yeah.
So
No, well deserved. Exciting.
Sicily. So I wish I was in Sicily, but it'd be nice to be virtually transformed there.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. So just as a reminder, anyone who wants to stay in touch with Michele, her Instagram is amazing. She is the Intrepid Italian on Instagram, and she posts lots of really helpful short videos around different topics. There was one I was watching that I shared around the days of the week.
Yeah.
And that was really cute. And like how you were explaining actually then what it meant each day. So like Luna D, you were like, oh, actually this means moon day. And it was little memory hooks to help
Yeah,
you
exactly.
remember the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
very,
mean,
very
it's such a big, powerful thing to, and a memory hook is basically another term for just saying a mnemonic. A mnemonic is a way that you remember things. Like growing up in Australia, to remember north, east, south, and west, we would think never eat soggy wheat bix. Every country seems to have their own version of this, but for me, growing up, or Roy G. Biv for the colors of the rainbow, these are all examples of mnemonics. So I try and bring that into my courses where I create or give you a way that you can remember something with mnemonics. So that's what I did with the days of the week. Luna, lunedì. That's how we also get the word lunatic. So it's I told you, it's a history lesson. It's fascinating. It's good fun.
so great. So great. So yeah, everyone, I encourage you to follow Michele. And then for anyone who wants to find out more about the courses, I've got the link in my bio. You can find out. Have a look. If you've got questions, we'll pop back on next week to chat through them, or you can, obviously message Michele yourself as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. That's what I'm here for. I want to help.
Hey, amazing. Well, thank you so much. Look
My
forward to chatting
pleasure.
to you next
Yeah.
week.
Thank you so much. And yeah, wishing you all a wonderful start to the week.
Yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. Thanks, Michele.
Thanks, Liz.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.